I'm Scott Graves. I own a little pottery called Pottery. It's a big pottery at one time called Lakeside Pottery, and doing my own thing right now. So first thing I want to do is show you my new studio that I'm kind of proud of, and we'll go over a few things here. Let me unplug my computer. We'll walk it around a little bit. First of all, there's the wheel. Okay. Another wheel. Got to have two wheels. You need a nice clean workspace. Look at this workspace, Pat. It looks out over it's got 3 big windows, looks out over the street. It's wonderful. And we've got my wear cart where when I throw, I need to dry my pots. This one's obviously finished and decorated. I'm pointing at the screen. Oh my goodness. This one's finished and decorated. This one's wet and ready to go. And then some other stuff I threw yesterday that need drying. This is just got out of the kiln and needing grinding wear cart. Some kind of cool stuff there that I've made. Half of that is sold already. My kilns, obviously. Inside of the kiln. Digital kiln. And I have 2 of them. One is a real workhorse. This guy I brought up to 10 more times, cone 10, which is really, really hot, more times than I'd like to say, and change elements more times than I'd like to say. In fact, you can see how nasty that actually looks inside there because of how hot it's gotten. My bisqueware, finished goods under plastic to keep the dust off them. Lots and lots of finished pieces there. All right, everybody needs a sink. And we're using the Nicky Ross double sink, triple pail method here to keep all the stuff out of the drain lines. This is my chemical area. This is where I mix my glazes. Got all the chems down here, there. All the other stuff up top. And it goes right over into my glazes. And you can see I have probably, and this is only half of them, the rest are in storage. You can tell I have just as many glazes as we have at the studio. And each one does a specific thing. There's probably $10,000 of glazes sitting there right now because of how expensive it is to do them. All right, so this demonstration, we're going to work with some tools. I want to explain what these tools are real quick. So for this demonstration, we're going to need a wire cutter, which is basically a couple of handles, and you might as well just say a fish line in between them. A needle tool, a straight rib, a metal rib, which is like a razor blade, and a curved rib. And then towards the end, we'll finish it with the finishing tool, with the trimming tool. All right, check something real quick. All right, let's get to the demo. This is the fun part. So let's make sure everything is set right so you can see what's going on. How's that look, guys?
We can see it.
Awesome. Well, the first thing we need to do is find some clay. We have some clay over here. This clay has been used before, so it needs to be wedged. And what I mean by wedge is we're going to knead it like dough. We're going to try to get all the air bubbles that I made last time and put into this thing when I got mad and angry and pulled the pot off and threw it onto the, well, never mind. So we're going to wedge all those air bubbles out. So I'm going to knead it and not roll it back on itself to put air bubbles in. This will take a couple of minutes, but the advantage is I did a little bit of this beforehand. All right. So you'll see there's still some air bubbles down here. At the bottom of this, I'm just going to push those in. Push them in, and I'm going to round that bottom off. When we throw this down onto the wheel head, when you throw it down, you want the air to go forward and not form an air pocket underneath it. All right, first thing we're going to do is dampen the wheel head, but not wet, just damp. That way the clay will stick to it. Slam it down, air goes outward. Turn the wheel on. And now we're going to center this piece. And what I mean by centering, before this gets too loud, is it's the same thing as having a wheel balanced on your car. If the wheel is slightly off balance on your car shakes. It'll shake down the road. So they put little weights on it to balance it so that the wheel runs very smooth. We're going to try to do that with this clay. We're going to make it into a perfectly round tire. Even the top can't be moving up and down because that's off center too. In order to do that, we got to get some water on it, squish it together, and you'll see it's just going all over the place. It's just back and forth and up and down. So we have to kind of smoosh that all down to start with. And you can see it's just wobbling. It's just hitting my finger each time it goes around. It's going up and down. So from here, we need to push inward. It's called centering the clay because we're pushing towards the center to get this thing to stay even. So I'm going to push forward with one hand on the other side. And on the top, to stop it from going up and down, I'm going to put a thumb on top of it. Okay, in this case, I'm going to pull towards myself with my hand towards the center and then press with the top. It's hard to see that way. I'll do it left-handed. Just by doing that, we're very close. But if I put my finger here, it's barely wobbling and hitting my finger. But that's not good enough because the inside of this I can feel is not centered. So we got to bring it up through our hand, make it tall again, compress it through fingers on top, get over the top of it, and use the weight of your chest to push this down. And voila, you have a centered piece of clay. All right. So before we go drilling and doing anything else with this clay, I want to show you what we're going to make. We're going to try to duplicate this piece. It's got a nice, beautiful rim, and it's rounded like this. It's an arts and crafts style piece, which is what I make, by the way. That's what Door Pottery makes. It's an arts and crafts style pot, which is Frank Lloyd Wright, 1900, 1918, that era. All right, first thing we're going to do is drill a hole. And to do that, I'm going to use my fingers like this. One finger on top of the other finger gives you double strength. So I can push down. This is pretty firm clay, so I need to push down kind of firm. Put some water in there to lubricate it, and now I'm just going to push down. Right in the center. Until I get about, 3/8 of an inch from the bottom, and then I'm going to pull back super slow. Everything at this point is all in slow motion. If you go too fast, it'll throw the whole thing off center. So I'll show you what we made. This is what it looks like now. We've just drilled a hole into the bottom of this. It has no bottom at this point. It just has a hole. Right, so now we need to make a bottom. So in order to do that, I'm going to put my fingers back. I'm going to get underneath it, and I'm going to pull back slowly towards myself. You need to do this over at least 20 rotations to keep it on center. A little more water. I'm just going to start pulling towards myself. You can see how slow I do this. All right, and now I'm going to push down on the bottom and go back and forth from the center out. It's called compressing the bottom. So compressing it like this stops it from cracking when it's drying. I'll show you what we made. This is a very important step that a lot of even some of the students that have had 100 classes with me still skip. They still don't make bottoms on their pieces. They just start pulling off. So there's the bottom of the pod. That's super important. Right. The next thing we're going to, I forgot to mention, we needed a sponge. and a sponge on a stick. Very important. So we're going to take this sponge, fill it full of water, and put water right over the inside and the outside of this. Now we're going to pull upward. In order to do that, you have to think of your fingers as a pair of pliers. Okay, that wall of that pot is this thick right now. If I were to pull straight up, you'd get no height. If I were to pinch it in a little bit like a pair of pliers and then pull upward, clay has nowhere to go but straight up. So we're going to do that with this first pull. It's called a pinch pull. So I'm gonna make sure that the sponge has a ton of water on it. Put it over one of my thumbs to keep it moist, and then I'm going to squeeze it in a little bit, and I'm going to pull straight up with it. You'll see it's gaining height. When you get towards the top, you kind of loosen up on that pull a little bit. All right, I'm going to do that one more time because I can get my fingers back in there. So I'm going to push on the outside towards my finger. Now I've made it this big. And I'm going to pull that straight up. And voila. We have some height. We also have a little bit of off-centered clay. If you can see, the top is going up and down. Every rotation, you can see it moving up and down a little bit. That's where a needle tool comes in handy. We're going to take those pair of pliers, and we're going to pinch the outside of this wall. And we're going to ride this needle tool on my thumb and go through the clay until it pricks my finger on the other side. Give it a full rotation and then pick it up. This is important because your pot will go off-center if you don't get this off-center clay out of it. So I'm going to ride it along my thumb until I feel it prick my finger, give it a rotation, and pick it straight up. And you pull that off-center clay off. All right. Oh, that's perfect now. Except for the fact that I can't get my fingers down to the bottom anymore to do that pinch pull. So now I have to have these two hands talking to each other because one hand is going to be in the pot, in the potter's position, and the other hand is going to be on the outside. One will be touching the other to tell what hand is working, or what these two hands are working together. So I'm going to go inside, put a little pressure on the bottom, go outside, push that clay inward. Now my pliers are between two hands, and I'm touching this hand. Now I'm going to push them together and pick it straight up, super, super slow. Get towards the top and kind of lighten up on that push. Now we are 5 inches tall. At this point, I'm going to neck the top in. I'll show you real quick what we're going to do here. Because this pot has a neck narrower than this exterior here, we have to push that in. So we have a pot that's that big around right now. So very quickly, I'm going to take my hands like this and push inward, just like it's like putting a clamp on a hose, just clamping it together. I'm going to push in, push in, push in. And there we go. It's narrower than the outside now. So we have to remember, clay has memory. When I pushed it in and I bring it back out, it remembers where it was. It's a very strange concept, but it works. So when I jam my hand in here, my hand's a little bit bigger, and it goes back out, that's okay. So now from here, I'm going to make one more pull. Get a little height. I'm going to leave a little clay towards the center, left some clay in here. What I mean by that is I left it a little thicker down there because when we go to bring it outward, it'll thin out. All right, so now our next pull is going inside, bending your hand, and then we're going to push outward on that pot to make that bulge. So when we start at the bottom, because the bulge is smaller there, we don't push out very far. And as we're going up the pot, then we push out further and further, and when we get towards the top, then we start lightening up on it again. That's that. And that will give you the bulge to make it round. All right. So here we go. I'm pushing out. I'm pushing out further. Pushing out further. Now I'm lightening up on that a little bit, and I'm coming right up to the top. And you'll see we've made a bulge. At this point, we're going to use one of our ribs, our pointed ribs. And we're going to go inside on the bottom of this. You can hear it scraping the bottom. And I'm going to push in and pull clay out. Pull all that extra clay out right there from the bottom. And I've left a little ridge. That ridge is going to be the foot of this piece. So I'm going to round it off a little bit with my finger. I'm not sure you can see that or not. I'll bring that a little closer. See, I'm thinking ahead of what this pot wants to look like. Big mistake that a lot of people make is they don't know what they're making. They'll put it on the wheel, they'll center it, they'll bring it up, and they go, what am I going to make with this now? Well, and they go, well, whatever it turns out like. That's not what we're doing here. So you can see I left that clay on the bottom, a little lump of clay, a little bead of clay there. All right. The next thing I want to do is use my rounded rib. See how that fits right onto that piece right there? I can smooth that whole thing out and push it out even further with my rounded rib now. I'm going to go inside, push out against that rounded rib, get back in, even prettier. All that crap came up, excuse me, all that clay came off that side of that pot. Now we're going to do some finishing touches on this. We need to neck this back in. Because that's not tall enough to actually make this whole lip. It's only this tall. We got to extend it a little bit. So we're going to do our pliers pinch pull again. So I'm going to grab right where I want it to be extended. I'm going to pinch it. I'm going to pull it up, and I'm going to get some height. Then, to smooth that out, we're going to use the back side of this rib. A little rounded. So there's finger marks on there. I want those finger marks out. Okay, pull more stuff off. All right. The next step would be to make the rim. In order to make that rim, I need some water. Make this really slippery. I'm going to put my finger right in that little crack right there, and I'm going to pull this right over the top of my finger. Just like that. Using our rib again. You see how important ribs are. We're going to use our rib again. This time with the straight rib, we're going to use this curved part of it, and we're going to go inside there. And we're going to push out against it, and it's going to make a perfect curve. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to get all of that sloppy clay that's on the outside of this pot yet. It's still there's a lot of slip, which is water and clay. We have to get that off the pot or it won't dry evenly. Second to the last thing. So I'm going to take this rib and I'm going to bend it to the shape of the pot. And right now you're going, okay, but don't cut yourself because it's sharp. because this has a reverse or a curve on it, an arc also, I can shove that arc right inside there. And this is all the slip that we left on that pot that needs to come off. Right. Now we need to get the water out of this piece. If you leave the water in, it will dry unevenly. And you'll get tremendous cracks to the bottom of this pot. It needs to be super dry. You can't see any shininess on the bottom of this piece. Okay. So at this point, we need to cut this piece off and put it somewhere where we can dry it. All right, that's where our cutter comes in handy. I am going to take flat board, put it there for now, and then I'm going to put some water on the wheel head. I'm going to take the cutter, I'm going to put it down on the wheel head with 2 fingers, pushing down as hard as I can and then drawing it through. In fact, I might draw it through twice to get more of the water under there, the hydroplane. Then I'm going to take something called pot lifters. You need to get pot lifters wet. You pull one for one side, not way under, one under the other side. I'm going to twist and lift. I'm going to grab my board. I'm going to lift it right off and put it on the board. And then we're going to see how close we actually got. Let's see. It's a lot smaller than what we had, and I have a foot I'm going to trim. But in the end, let's back it up a little bit. It's pretty close to what we were trying to make. So we're going to take that. We're going to, in my case, I'm going to put it over on the wear cart. I'm going to clean my area up. We're going to trim this piece. Let's say that we've given this about 5 hours of sitting out on a nice dry day, unlike the humidity that's out there today. I'm going to get cleaned up here a little bit. Big sponge comes in handy. So when you're trimming, it's kind of important to keep your wheel kind of dry. You don't want a lot of wet around it. And we're going to cheat a little bit with this trimming. It's not how I teach it in class because it's quite difficult to do it the other way, because it means recentering your piece of pottery and then tacking it down with clay and then trimming it. We're going to cheat. We have something called a Giffen grip. And this Giffen grip has 3 little pads on it. It's right on top of the wheel. Rotate it and they open up. So, 5 hours later, we have the pot. Because it's not coming straight off, I'm going to cut underneath the space. I'm going to flip it upside down, making sure my Giffen grip is flat on the wheel head. And I'm going to twist it until it, we'll see how centered I actually threw this piece with this. Not too bad, not too awfully bad. The cool thing about it is it's a little bit wonky up and down. So it's moving up and down. If I were to do this, it's going up, bang, 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 hitting my finger. Well, we really don't want that to happen. So when we trim, you'll see that it'll carve deeper into one side. So I'm going to wet this. I'm going to take this paint scraper. I'm going to go over the top of it. I'm going to hold that paint scraper really tight and I'm going to just push down. It's gonna even that whole thing out. Clay on that side, clay on that side. Hopefully the bottom is thick enough that you can do that. And from this point, now we're going to use our trimming tool. And we might want to move this in just a little bit to show you this. Not have it all tip over. All right. So the trimming tool has a 45-degree angle on it. It's very hard to see, but there's an angle on this trimming tool. So if you're trying to trim your piece and you're flat, it's not going to trim real well. If you're too straight, it won't trim. You've got to hit that 45-degree angle on there, and the clay will fly off of it. So I'm going to hit that 45-degree angle, and you see how the clay is peeling off? So I'm a little thick at the bottom, and I can shape my pot at this point too if I don't like the shape of my vase. I'm going to pull some of that clay off. I'm going to dig. Now I can use it as a digger too, so I'm going to put it at an angle so I can dig up underneath this thing, make that foot, and I'm going to round it. And we have a foot. Again, let me show you how smooth that really is, if this will focus on it. I like to put a bottom on this also, an indented bottom. Right now the bottom is flat. Now that's fine unless you have not glazed enough on the interior of these, and then that bottom will cup and it'll spin like a top. So I'm going to dig into this thing. Because it's centered, I can just dig down straight into it. I'm going to cut away. This is very hard to see because of the angle. I'm going to cut down into the vase. I'm going to move this over. It's a great way to finish a piece of pottery. It makes it look kind of professional. You pull all that clay off of there, right out of the foot. This is what we ended up with. A foot that looks like that. Has a beautiful round edge to it. And a vase that looks like that. That vase can be decorated on the outside any way possible at this point. You could cut stars into it. You could add things to it. You'll see. I'll run you over here real quick. Again, if you can possibly see that pot, there's trees that I've applied to that piece. And then there's some water down here. This will be the water. This is background trees. This is the main tree trunk. And that took about 2 hours of decorating to do that piece. So that's our demonstration on simple pottery throwing 101, which ends up being about sometimes 30 or 40 classes to get to this point, depending on who it is. Some people pick it up right away. That's it. Any questions?
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can put a question in the chat box, but feel free to ask any questions.
So I have a question.
Let me mute this. There you go. Perfect.
So if you don't have a Giffen grip, how would you hold your pot down to trim it?
All right. I'll show you. Pull that Giffen grip off. If you don't have that extra $189 for a Giffen grip, so you take your pot and you need to center it now. Once you've got it off the wheel head, you're going to take it, try to get it as close to the center as you can.
Can you? Yeah. There we go. Yay.
Right. Turn your wheel back on. And you see how far off center that is? how my finger, so you need to recenter this. And this can take some time. Every time I hit finger, you push it over. You need this very centered though. The important thing to remember with this, I'm centering the belly of this. The part you're going to trim is what needs to be centered. If you've thrown your piece off center to start with, and you center the belly and the bottom's doing this, you can't trim it. But if you're throwing it off center and you're going to trim this part, this is the part that needs to be centered. This can be wobbling all over the place. That's fine, but you're trimming here, so this is what you need to trim. Okay, so you're going to put that down on your wheel head like that. You're going to suction cup it down, but just pushing down a little bit on it, and then you're going to grab some clay. 3 or 4 chunks of clay. I'm going to just lay them there. I'm going to lay them right on the rim. I'm not going to push down yet. All right. Now you don't want to push inward to the pot. You want to push down onto the wheel. That way you won't move your pot. All right, that's stuck pretty well. So now I can go start trimming on this. And this is how I teach it. I make people do this for the first 20 classes before I let them use it differently. I just want them to have a good idea of how the old potters did it.
Scott, we got another question. It was, how do you know how much to trim off your pot?
Oh, so you don't go through the piece?
Right.
Yeah. Interesting question. Because the thing is, it only happens like out of the 8 people in my class, it only happens maybe twice in a 10 class period, 10 class time that somebody will trim through their pot. They kind of have an idea where they are. If you want to, though, take the needle tool. This is the reverse needle tool now. You take that needle tool, and this is while the pot is still in your hand. Here, let's get it out there. Still in your hand. Take the needle tool, push it in till you feel it prick your finger. And then put your finger right where that needle tool is and pull it out. And that gives you the depth of your pot. There you go. Oh my God, I put a hole in my piece of pottery. What am I gonna do now? Fill it in. Take that, fill it in. You'll probably have to fill it in after you've trimmed it too, if you put a foot in it like that. Go inside and push it over like that. You made a little air bubble in there, but in most cases, the air bubble is so small it won't make a difference on this one. And you can always think ahead, and when you're drilling your hole, make it 3/8 or bigger. Okay, don't go down to a 1/4 inch, because when you start trimming at a 1/4 of an inch, you're just going to be pushing the bottom down into it, and it's going to be on the interior. It's going to look arched like this. And then when you fire that thing, it's more than likely going to try to straighten out and crack. So always leave about a 3/8 inch on the bottom. And again, when you're throwing it and you've done your first drill, take that needle tool, go down in there until it hits the bottom, pull it up and go, that's how thick it is. I need to leave it that thick. And now you know how thick your piece is going to be in the end. It's all a matter of thinking ahead when you're throwing your piece of pottery, which, again, a lot of people obviously don't think ahead. At least in my classes, they don't think ahead. Even though I do scream at them. I mean, I tell them what a bad person they are and probably don't live their life well and all of that. Yeah. Oh, you know better. Yeah, just think ahead, and always leave at least 3/8 of an inch on the bottom.
And how do you judge the thickness of the side?
What's that?
How do you judge the thickness of the side?
The thickness of the sides?
Mm-hmm. Like for the foot. So you've just gauged the bottom, and then
Yep.
how would you help students gauge how thick that bottom corner is?
I'm going to have to show you that. I'll show it. Thin piece of chunk of clay. It's when you make your bottom. This is in my case. Every potter has a little different way of doing this. All right. Now I'm going to drill that hole.
Can you focus the camera down a little further?
Yep, I'll get up there and I'll show you exactly what I did.
Thank you.
Now, instead of pulling out, and I had a student 20 years ago, and he ended up teaching at MSCR. His name was Al. And I had to show him this trick, and he showed it to every one of his students. When you're pulling outward, now I've got the hole drilled, and now I'm going to start pulling outward. Instead of just pulling outward, tilt your fingers and drag it across the bottom. So right now, I have just a hole, and it's rounded. You see how the bottom is rounded, like cupped? This is going to square the whole thing off. I'm going to go in, and instead of just pulling out, I'll call it, I'm sure people have heard, I call it chicken claw. Chicken claw in like that. You roll it down, and then you take, now you've gone flat against your finger, and now you push down. And this might not be answering the question, but it's going to solve the problem. All right, so what I've done is made, those are perfectly 90-degree corners now. That comes over and up instead of curved. So this goes right here and goes 90 degrees straight up. That solves your problem from the outside thickness of the wall on that thing. If you did it like without doing that, it gets curvy like this. You see how the wall is curved now instead of straight up and down and straight over? That's leaving all that clay in there. You don't want that clay on the bottom of your piece. So you got a chicken claw. Go in, go underneath, pull that way, and then push down a little bit. So it's a perfectly 90-degree angle. Did that answer your question, or am I off base there?
No, I think that answers it. There's going to be people that need to take extra clay off of the base and extra clay off of the corner as well.
Trim it off. I guess maybe I'm not understanding. You can leave clay in there and have a little at your bottom, especially if you're making a foot. Let's flip this thing over. If you think that so you're saying, hey, my bottom's too thick, too heavy, I need to get some of that clay out of there. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, just if they have extra clay on the corner, how do they gauge how much clay they have there? So you showed how to gauge the base.
Right here?
Yep.
Okay, let's put this back on there. Oh, how do you judge it? Oh, I get it now. Stick your hand inside. Put a finger there. Close your eyes. Touch. Like you're trying to touch fingers. It'll tell you. You'll know right away how thick that wall is in there. Just put the finger right at the bottom, right where you want to check it, and put your other finger over the top where you think your finger is, and then close your eyes. And if that doesn't work for you, then lift them both up and down like that. Feel. You'll be able to feel how thick that is, and that's going to tell you, hey, I've got too much on there. I want to trim some of it away. That's the best way I can explain how I do it. Perfect. Does that answer your question?
It does.
All right, good. That eye close thing, it gets really important. You can't believe how often I literally close my eyes when I'm trying to do a piece and think, something's wrong with that. It's just not, it just doesn't look right. And then you close your eyes, you see what you want to make, and you open them again while you're looking straight at the pot, and all of a sudden the image in your mind for a split second goes over the top of the image that you just threw. And by God, you know what you've done wrong. And especially when you're decorating a piece or glazing a piece too. It works the same way. Hey, what colors do you think I should? How many people in class actually go, what color combination? If I do this and I do this, what's that going to do? How many times have you heard me say, close your eyes, think about what it's going to look like. And then they open them up and they go, that's not really going to work, is it? I think that's going to look like this. And then they ask me again, I said, yep, you're exactly right. That eye closing thing with me, I mean, it works really, really well. So there's a certain amount of artistry to it. You gotta just, and it comes. 33 years of pottery now. I don't know. I almost don't have to close my eyes anymore.